If I were to ask you what the first thing you think of when it comes to character creation, the answer would be plain and simple, right? Just a system that lets you customize your character, no matter if it may be your basic character creator or something a bit more advanced. Okay, but then you have games that aren't your average character creator, but more like selecting from a couple of characters to play. No matter if the game lets you customize the character or not, there's still some customization as you're in control of who you want to play, whether you choose that character because you like their playstyle, or simply think that they're cool. Point is, we all know what a character creator is, right? Sure, there are some deviances such as how complex a character creator may be, but you wouldn't expect anything weird like having to fight and customize at the same time. That would be weird and terrible. Why would you implement that in the first place? So I'm sure when you've read the title that some video game character creators have quizzes might have intrigued or maybe even confused you. Let me preface this by saying, no, you don't take a quiz to determine every customizable part of your character. Rather, how do I say this? You know those quizzes, like the which Undertale character are you quiz by on Quotive.com? That's right, Veggie didn't realize I specifically used your quiz as a reference in this video for whatever reason, but guess what, here we are now! The point is, these quizzes are meant to determine your playstyle based on your answers. Hopefully if that makes sense. If not, I hope the rest of this video will help with what I'm getting at. In this video, I'll be taking a look at 3 games that have some sort of quiz that affects a person's playstyle throughout the rest of their time playing the game. I'll be doing this in order from the game whose character creation quiz isn't a quiz, to the game that most definitely has a quiz in its character creation. Without further ado, we shall begin.
So the first game I would like to talk about is the first Kingdom Hearts game. You know, the game series where Mickey Mouse becomes an emo. More specifically, the tutorial portion of Kingdom Hearts. See, in the tutorial, it not only teaches you the basics of the game, but also gives you some control over what you would like your playstyle to be. Twice! The first instance is when you're presented with 3 weapons, a sword, a shield, and a magic wand. You're then prompted to choose one of these weapons to focus on. It's pretty straightforward what each weapon is supposed to represent. The shield representing melee damage, the shield being defense, and the magic wand representing, well, magic. But then the game throws in a unique curveball, in which after you select a set to focus on and that weapon disappears, you're then prompted to select the weapon you would sacrifice, thus sacrificing a set to focus on in the process. What I find interesting here is that even though it's 3 stats, it allows you to mix and match for your playthrough, but it also makes you think about what to prioritize and what to sacrifice in your playthrough. If you want to focus on melee and sacrifice defense, yeah, you'll be doing a lot of damage with your Keyblade, but you're more prone to hits as well. Specialize in magic and sacrifice melee hits? Well, good luck, because until you learn your first spell, your hits aren't doing much against the Heartless. Your stats aren't the only thing affected, however, as depending on the combination of weapons affects your inventory capacity from 6 to 8 items. Yeah, I don't know why that is. It just doesn't make sense. What does make sense, however, is that the combination of weapons also affects what skills you learn early on and learn later. This also supports what I said earlier on how the beginning part of the game makes you think about what to prioritize and what to sacrifice. As now, if you want that powerful skill you've heard was really good, but might require focusing on a set you're not too keen on. For example, if you were to select the sword as the weapon you're focusing on, you'll be able to learn the ability Slapshot at only level 12. However, if you chose the magic wand instead of the sword, that same ability you'll end up learning at is, and I'm not joking when I say this, level 69. Nice. Well, not nice, but, you know. It's a number related to set. Moving on from that, towards the end section of the tutorial, we're transported to Destiny Island, where we're asked one question from 3 Final Fantasy characters. These characters are, Which characters from which games are these from again? There's just so fucking many. Ah! Right! KatietheFandomGirl from Final Fantasy X and Sylvie from Final Fantasy VIII. Each character will ask you one question and give you 3 possible answers. Titus asks what you're afraid of, with your answers being getting old, being different, and being indecisive. Waka asks what you want in life, your answers being to see rare sights, broaden your horizons, and be strong. Finally, Sylvie asks what's more important to you from these 3 answers, being number 1, wherever that's supposed to mean, friendship, and your prized possessions. While this may seem a bit random to someone who had just played this game for the first time, this short quiz does have an impact depending on your choices, and that is how your leveling changes. If most of your answers were the top answers, then your first 50 levels will require less XP, while any level beyond that will require more XP than usual. If most of your answers were the middle answers, then every level will generally require the same amount of XP. Finally, if most of your answers were the bottom answers, then while the first 50 levels will require more XP than usual, any level beyond that will be easier to achieve. Honestly, I find this system unique, as you're in control of how easy you want to level up in what portion of the game, even if the answers are a bit random. The only thing I can think of the answers being what they are is, and I'm gonna get my tinfoil hat here, but hear me out. Getting old, seeing rare sights, and being number 1 could all relate to making the most out of your life, hence why leveling up at the beginning becomes easier. Being different, broadening one's horizons, and friendship are the closest answers relating to how Sora is as a character. Therefore, it would make sense for the level curve to be about the same. Finally, being indecisive, being strong, and one's prized possessions could, in a weird way, relate to someone who doesn't have much to slowly becoming more and more powerful. I might be overthinking it, but that's the best I can interpret those answers. I guess you could say that the Destiny Island segment counts more as a quiz than the weapon choice segment at the beginning, but honestly, in the end, they both involve choosing answers that impact your gameplay in one way or another. The weapon choice segment impacts what stats you prioritize and don't prioritize in, while the Destiny Island segment determines your leveling curve. Of course, other games had done this better, which brings me to the next game I would like to talk about. If you had played this game in one of its earlier patches, you might recognize this quiz when you first wanted to sign in. Jumping from an old PlayStation RPG to a card MMO meant for children, the next game I would like to talk about is Wizard 101. Whether you're a new player to the game or barely even touched the game at all, you might remember that Wizard 101 has a unique way of having you select a class, or rather, a magic school according to the game. See, when you're making a new character, the game makes you take a quiz that, depending on your answers, determines what magic school and its magic your character will specialize in. When I was a kid first playing this, I remember being amazed by this quiz. I would usually make random characters and mess around with the quiz just to see what magic school I ended up getting. Although, looking back on it now, it's a bit strange, to say the least. Some questions make sense, like a question that asked if you prefer to go to a party with friends or go by yourself, which made sense when you think about it, as some of the magic schools were great for solo runs, while others were more like support classes that may require the help of others to get through the game, even though you could solo with them if you tried. Then you get questions like which natural disaster is the most powerful, or what your favorite mythical creature is. While having nothing to do with what magic class fulfills what role, you still get some idea of what each answer corresponds with what magic school. Yes, I finally said it correctly. For example, in the natural disaster question, the blizzard answer corresponds with the School of Ice, and in the question about mythical creatures, the unicorn answer corresponds with the School of Life. But then, you get questions like what your favorite season was or what your favorite activity is, which are completely ambiguous and don't correspond to any magic school at all. At a glance, at least. Then at the very end, if your answers resulted in a tie between 2 or more schools, the game provides a sort of tiebreaker by having you select which gem you'd like, which ends up being the most obvious answer to what magic school. Ruby represents the School of Fire, Onyx represents the School of Death, Sapphire represents the School of Ice, etc., etc. Moving on from the quiz's absurd questions, if you don't like the result you got, you can easily take the quiz again. Or, even if you don't want to take the quiz at all, the game allows you to skip the quiz entirely and select the magic school you want to try out. While I feel like the question should have had to do more with what each magic school specializes in more, I still found it intriguing that this unique approach is a cool way for players to select their class, or magic school, whatever. Not only did this game allow your selected magic school to be up to fate depending on what your answer to its quiz is, but it also allowed you to take it as many times as you want, and even let you skip it entirely if you want to be in control of what magic school you wanted to choose. Of course, it's not as iconic as one more game that I would like to talk about in this video. And if you have played at least one of these games in this Pokemon spin-off series, you may know what I'm talking about. The last game I would like to talk about is not one particular game, and is more than a game spin-off series. That game series is the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games. If there's one thing that the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games are best known for, besides the Mystery Dungeons that is, will have to be the quiz you take at the very beginning of the game. Right as you start up the game, it makes you take a personality quiz. At the end of the quiz, it tells you your personality and then tells you what Pokemon you are. In addition, there's also a question at the very end that asks you about your gender, which also affects what your result will be. After you get your result, you get to choose your partner Pokemon, which accompanies you throughout the entire game. To keep things balanced, the game makes sure that your partner Pokemon isn't the same type as you, which makes sense because if the two of you were fire types, it would be a living hell fighting water types. It seems basic enough, and yet each game entry that has this personality quiz slightly changes how the results are affected by this. In Red and Blue Rescue Team, everything I have said before remains the same, but there are around 6 Pokemon that can only be played by one of the two genders. Cyndaquil, Machop, and Meowth for male, and Eevee, Skitty, and Chikorita for female. In addition, there are 6 Pokemon that can be partner Pokemon, that being Meowth, Psyduck, Machop, Eevee, Cubone, and Skitty. In Explorers of Time and Darkness, the personality quiz has changed up a lot, as now you can play as any of the available Pokemon regardless of gender. In addition, only the 3 normal types are excluded from being partner Pokemon. In Explorers of Sky, the gender-exclusive Pokemon have returned, with Fanby, Shinx, and Riolu only being played as males, while Vulpix, Eevee, and Skitty are only being played as females. In addition, the gender-exclusive Pokemon are the only ones that come with egg moves, like how Riolu comes with Bite, while Vulpix comes with Faint Attack. However, this time, no Pokemon is excluded from being partner Pokemon, which means this leaves room for many, many possible matchups. Finally, there's the Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, which, if I'm going to be honest, is the most unique out of the 4 entries. There are 8 questions in total. The first 5 determine your personality, the 6th determines what Pokemon you'll be, the 7th determines what Pokemon your partner Pokemon will be, and finally, the 8th question determines your partner Pokemon's gender. Simply put, the quiz lets you play as any of the available Pokemon on screen, regardless of personality or gender. However, what makes this stand out is the fact that if you don't like the Pokemon the game selected for you, or your partner, you can simply reject the game's choice and choose the Pokemon you want. Which is a plus, since in the other games, if you don't like your result, you either have to suck it up and deal with it, or turn off the game and reboot it to get the Pokemon you like. The Pokemon Mystery Dungeon personality quiz had gone through a ton of changes throughout the years, and yet it still manages to keep the simple formula where your decisions affect your personality, and that ultimately decides what Pokemon you'll be. If I had to choose my favorite out of these 4 entries, I'm going to have to pick Explorers of Sky. Yes, it kind of sucks that some Pokemon are gender locked, but the fact that you and your partner can be any of the available Pokemon with the many possible matchups makes up for it entirely. On the other hand, I'm calling Super Mystery Dungeon game to have my least favorite personality quiz. Maybe it's because the Super Mystery Dungeon quiz was the most confusing to research when working on this section, but overall, I think it's just weak. While the option to choose a Pokemon on your own is nice, I feel like the quiz hasn't placed enough emphasis on picking an actual Pokemon. All you need is to choose one option and it automatically determines what you and your partner Pokemon will be. I think it could have worked just having the quiz determine your personality, which associates with one of the available Pokemon. If you don't like the Pokemon, you can simply choose the Pokemon yourself and keep the personality you got. In other words, just have the quiz focus entirely on the personality and it'll be slightly better. So with that, we've finally gone through all the 3 games I wanted to talk about, with all 3 of its quizzes affecting the game in one way or another. The beginning quiz in Kingdom Hearts affects your gameplay by having you be in charge of what stats you prefer to focus on. It also affects your leveling curve, which can be the equivalent of how difficult you want your playthrough to be in what sections of the game. Wizard 101's quiz works as a way to either let fate decide what class, magic school, whatever you should be, while also still giving you the freedom to select the magic school you want to try out. Finally, the personality quizzes in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games let fate decide what pre-selected character, or Pokemon in this case, you should be, with how it gives you what results evolve with each entry, while also managing to keep the formula of your personality and gender affecting what Pokemon you made. All of these quizzes are unique in their own way, and quite honestly, it's these games that make me believe that the quiz formula should be implemented more in character creations. Of course, I do know why that isn't the case. Allow me to explain the negatives when it comes to these quizzes in character creation. So while I do think that quizzes are an interesting feature for character creations and should be implemented more, I do understand why they're not as popular. The teams behind Kingdom Hearts, Wizard 101, and the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series seem to have understood that in one way or another. Yeah, all those games with quizzes in their character creation I just told you guys about, they gave up on that idea of quizzes in their character creations. Kingdom Hearts I know the least about it, but from what I've seen they haven't integrated the part where you choose what stats you favor and don't favor, nor have they included the XP curve quiz like in the first game, with their future editions that is. With the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, it started with Adventure Squads that had many Pokemon to select from, but no quiz. However, let's face it, the Adventure Squad games were never that popular to begin with. But then we have Gates to Infinity, a game that people knew about and had the smallest roster of selectable Pokemon ever, including no quiz. In Super Mystery Dungeon, they brought back the quiz, but as I said before, it wasn't exactly the greatest to begin with. Then at last, we have Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, which had no quiz either, so the quiz feature may be dying out in this beloved spin-off series, but take that with a grain of salt. As for Wizard 101, it still has its quiz to this very day, but only in the game itself, as it got rid of the quiz when you sign up for a Wizard 101 account. Why only get rid of it in the sign-up section? Who knows. But the point is that there's a reason why quizzes aren't being used in video game character creations. The main reason is simple. How would you even incorporate a quiz in the first place? Firstly, it might be hard to implement it naturally, unless they just want to plop a quiz on you, plain and simple. Secondly, to video game companies, it just seems unnecessary. What would even be the point in adding a quiz when you can just do something much easier, like, you know, a regular character creator? To the company, there's simply no need to unless they feel like adding some extra flair. Sad? Yes. But it's understandable when thinking in the perspective of a video game company. So now that I've gone through all of that info, I think it's time to share my final thoughts on all of this. So, what are my overall thoughts on this? Personally, while I do understand why quizzes and character creations are so unpopular, I still think they should be implemented. It could work like the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games where your choices determine what pre-selected character you would get, or maybe like Wizard 101 where you do a quiz that determines what class you get. And unlike Wizard 101, the questions and choices have to do with the classes themselves. Now, there will be people who just don't want to have fate decide what character or class they'll be, which is why the quiz should be optional then. But at the end of the day, unless someone decides to make a quiz and incorporate that, the quiz feature in character creations isn't exactly going to happen anytime soon. I still do think this feature could and should be implemented more. I do. If done right, this feature could end up making unique character creations and or character selections in games. However, that's just wishful thinking. And right now, where it is right now, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Thank you for watching, everyone. I know this is a bit of an odd video of mine, but honestly, I'm pretty proud of the result at the very end, and I just wanted to make this for fun. I also apparently have 50 subscribers now, so thank you to the people that joined while I was making this. Also, apparently I have community posts now, so check that out too. I'm
might post some art or something, I don't know. I have more videos coming up in the future, but due to college, you might have to wait a bit, like with this video. Apologies in advance for that. Anyways, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you all later. Bye!